The library without books. In the future, screens ruled everything. They covered every wall and every hand. People spoke less. Data spoke more. Books had become myths. No one turned pages anymore. No one touched paper or smelled ink. But somewhere, in the silence of La Mora, an old building whispered. It held the ghosts of forgotten stories. And one curious boy heard them. His name was Elian Gray. The city of La Mora stretched endlessly. It was all steel, glass, and light. Cars flew soundlessly above the streets. Billboards were alive. They talked and moved like people. Children did not run in parks. They sat inside learning pods. They wore wristbands to control feelings. Life was smooth, bright, and cold. Elian Gray was 12. He lived in Sky Tower District 9. His apartment was on the 73rd floor. His parents were neural architects. They built dream worlds for others to escape reality. They loved Elian, but they were busy. They had no time for stories. No time for books. At school, no one read. Learning was uploaded straight into minds. No paper, no pencils, no thinking. Imagination was called wasteful. Creativity was slow. But Elian was not like the others. At night, when the city slept, he dreamed. He saw castles with glowing windows. He saw ships fighting sea monsters. He imagined heroes with swords of fire. He never told anyone about this secret world. Then, one rainy afternoon, his life changed. Rain was rare in La Mora. Weather was usually programmed by machines. But for 3 days, the sky poured. Streets shimmered. The signals glitched. Elian's hologram watch blinked and froze. His learning pod stopped syncing. He wandered into a side street. It was narrow and quiet. Ivy crawled up the walls. Elian had only seen ivy in old biology lessons. At the end of the alley stood a building. It was made of stone. Real stone, not synthetic walls. Vines hugged its surface. Faded letters were carved above the door. The library. There was no glowing sign. No digital voice to greet him. No data interface. Just silence. Elian stopped. His heart beat fast. Something about this place pulled him closer. Slowly, he pushed the door open. The door creaked. He had never heard that sound before. Inside, dust floated like tiny stars. Wooden shelves towered over him. Most of them were empty. But not all. A few objects sat quietly on one shelf. Elian walked closer. His breath caught. They were books. Real books. He touched one. Its cover was rough. It had a spine, a title, and paper pages. The words on the front read, "The Adventures of Tom Sawyer." Elian opened it. The pages were yellow but alive. He read the first line softly. Suddenly, the room around him shifted. He could hear a river. He could smell wet earth. He saw boys running and laughing. He felt wind in the trees. It was not a simulation. It was something far deeper. First time here. Elian jumped. An old man stood nearby. His sweater was patched at the elbows. His glasses were round and foggy. His smile was warm. "I didn't know this place existed," Elian whispered. "Most don't," the man said. "Not anymore. I'm Theo. I'm the keeper." "The keeper of what?" Theo gestured around them. "Stories. Real ones. Stories that live and breathe." "Why are the shelves empty?" Elian asked. Theo's eyes softened. "Because people stopped reading. They stopped imagining. When that happened, books began to fade. Some disappeared completely." "Can they come back?" "Yes," Theo said with a small smile. "But only if someone reads them. Only if someone remembers." Elian looked down at the book in his hands. His voice was quiet but firm. "I want to read them all." From that day, Elian returned to the library every afternoon. He read The Little Prince. He read Treasure Island. He read The Secret Garden. With every story, something happened. A shelf filled up. The air grew warmer. The library began to breathe again. Theo taught him everything. How to hold a book gently. How to repair a torn spine. How to make tea that smelled like paper and ink. One day, Theo gave Elian a blank book. "This one's yours," Theo said. "Mine?" Elian asked. "Yes. You've taken in many stories. Now it's time to give one back. Write your own." Elian hesitated. "But I've never written anything." Theo nodded. "Then start with something simple. A memory. A dream. Add a what if. That's how every story begins." That night, Elian opened the blank book. His hand trembled. He wrote the first line. "Once upon a time, in a city without stories, a boy found one. Something changed inside him. Words spread. Slowly. Quietly. One classmate saw Elian drawing a dragon. Another found a handwritten poem on their desk. A teacher noticed he was smiling. Soon, curious children followed him to the alley. The library began to bloom. Cobwebs melted away. Lights flickered back on. Books reappeared on shelves. Forgotten stories returned. Adults began to visit too. A mother cried while reading Charlotte's Web. An old engineer laughed through The Hobbit. Theo watched, his eyes shining. "Stories are seeds," he told Elian. "You planted them. You gave them water. Not everyone liked it. The city council tried to close the library. It has no firewall, they argued. No digital permit. It's not safe." But when they came with closure papers, they found children blocking the door. Each child held a book like a shield. Elian stood in front. "Stories are safe," he said. "They are the safest way to be brave." One councilwoman paused. She had once been a literature teacher. She looked at the children, then at the books. "Let them be," she whispered. The library stayed. One snowy morning, Elian found Theo sitting quietly. A book rested on his lap. "My story is ending," Theo said softly. Elian's throat tightened. "But you're the keeper." "You are now," Theo said, placing the blank book in Elian's hands. "Every generation needs a new one." That winter, Theo passed peacefully. The next morning, The library glowed brighter than ever. Years passed. Elian grew taller, older, wiser. His blank book filled with stories, poems, and adventures. It became the library's most borrowed book. Its title read, "The Library Without Books." It told about a city that forgot, a boy who remembered, and how stories returned. L'Amora changed. Tourists came to see the library, not the tech. Paper mills reopened. Children started writing again, not for grades, but for joy. Every book began with the same line. This book lives because someone chose to read it. Elian Gray didn't invent magic. He only remembered where it had been hiding. It lived in the rustle of pages. It lived in the smell of old ink. It lived in the heartbeat of every story. So, if you ever feel lost in a world of screens, remember this. Look for a quiet door. Look for a dusty shelf. Look for a title waiting to be opened. And listen, because stories never die. They only wait. And sometimes, all it takes is one reader to bring them back to life.